Hello ladies and gentlemen, I am Screen Scene Guru, and today we'll be discussing comic book news. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so I've got my Fantastic Four Omnibus to show off, which I have fully gotten done with, which is really exciting news. So let's dive on into that. Start by removing my Magneto helmet. Let's get into the comic. So last time we left off was a few issues back. Ben Grimm had been body swapped with another individual. Let's see if I can find that one. Yeah, it's right here. Issue 51. Show that off real quick. This man, this monster. Of course, it's where Ben is feeling quite sad about, not being human, wandering around the town. People try to convince him it's not so bad. Very interesting. And then he wanders into a scientist's den, a scientist's laboratory, after he's been using frequency to lure Ben there for weeks, months even. He has perfected this device which can duplicate or doppelgang, which is very funny that he chose Ben Grimm, the Thing, to go after. And then, of course, once he has taken his powers, he returns to the Baxter Building, where they explore. Reed is creating a machine to traverse space-time. So very interesting stuff there. Get to see Ben Grimm returns, being very angry that he's been replaced. We see the imposter crump up a bitch of metal, and then of course we see the giant machine that Reed's been working on. Real fascinating stuff. So I'll move on from there. Reed explains he has to traverse space-time like Galactus, Silver Surfer, and other threats because humanity must learn to conquer such an environment. And then we get to see back at college, we get the Human Torch kind of getting intimidated by the star of the football team. Then we have to have his roommate come in and break up the fight. Just very fascinating. Now, Wingfoot claims he has no interest in being in the academics, even though his father was part of the Olympics. We got the coach freaking out about how he needs to have Wingfoot on the team if he's to have a successful final season. This coach is very adamant about having a really good final season. And then, of course, we see Reed going through dimensions, through space-time, because he is entering the negative zone. Very interesting stuff there. And they do talk about how Sue Storm is in the hospital right now during this issue. Or actually, she's with Reed. This is before Sue's having a baby. But we see that the imposter has a moral conflict. He wants to destroy Reed, but he sees once all the scientific research he's been doing and to provide for humanity, he realizes he's actually a good person. He tries to save Reed, but the line snaps and he's dragged into the negative dimension. We then see the imposter use the last of his strength to hurl Mr. Fantastic out of the negative zone, leaving himself inside. It's very interesting. Then we see, Sue and them are mourning Ben's loss until Ben returns. It's very interesting stuff there. Then they realize he was an imposter. Here's just an analysis real quick of early Marvel Comics Fantastic Four annuals 1 through 5. just kind of discussing, a bit of a background lore of how the comics spread throughout the world, how they got popularity. Very interesting stuff. It's got a forward in it. It's got a little bit in the back talking about things. Okay, here's the last issue. We got King Size Special, Fantastic Four, Let There Be Life. So this is where they travel to the negative zone. And of course they meet Annihilus, which is rumored to be a villain for the sequel to the Fantastic Four. I know a lot of people are highly anticipating them showing up in Avengers Doomsday and possibly even Avengers Secret Wars. There has been an untitled Marvel movie that's been pushed off its slate. A lot of people were speculating that was Black Panther 3 or potentially Shang-Chi 2 or something else. I actually was thinking they were going to work on a Fantastic Four sequel and maybe call it Annihilation or Annihilus. It'd be very interesting if they did, because he's a big-time villain. But yeah, featuring the glory of birth, neath of shadow and death. So, very interesting stuff here. We see, of course, Reed is studying Sue's blood, and he realizes that ever since they went into space and got radiation in their powers, they had a higher radiation count in their blood cells. And then when Sue and them went to the negative zone, or at least she was outside the portal when they went in, she was exposed to too much radiation, and that could be dangerous for their baby, Nathaniel. So that's very interesting stuff. We do see the inside of the negative zone, where there are life forms being conquered, battles being had. So that's very fascinating as well. So moving on from there, we see that Johnny doesn't really need a distortion backpack, because Johnny can fly. So that's really interesting. But Reed and Ben need a transmit device to find their way back to our reality. So that's very fascinating. I do like the art design in some of these. They go through color to black and white. So that's really cool. Then we see this creature grab Reed as Johnny, Human Torch, is trying to burn it. He can't quite get close enough because he's at danger of risking Reed. So that's real fascinating. We do see that he is brought to the clutches of Annihilus. And then, of course, we see a friend of the family asking how Sue Storm is. And of course, the doctors are saying, it's not looking good. We're not sure what's wrong with her or how to cure her. All this stuff. So very drama-ish. And then, of course, Ben and Johnny are captured. And then we get to see the real look of Annihilus with his mechanical wings and his Iron Man-like suit. It's kind of different, but it's very much like Doom and Iron Man mixed together. So that's really cool. Moving on, he does recognize Reed out of the monsters and beasts in his collection, that he's been gathering mostly non-intelligent life forms, but these are actually from another world, and he's very interested in them. So, of course, Reed takes his chance, his opportunity to stretch out and fight Annihilus, but of course that leads to him being immobilized and being, laid out on the floor. We get to see new technology be introduced with his cosmic control rod. So that's very fascinating. He dispenses with all the lower life forms. He seems to destroy them right in front of Reed, like showing off that I could kill you at any moment. And then he throws Reed back in the cell with Johnny and Ben. So that's very fascinating as well. They eventually try to break their way out of the cage, but unfortunately it's been built to withstand all of their powers. And they even drop a giant boot in there on Ben, try to saw up Reed. So that's not very nice. He's, using these tools in his, weapons against the Fantastic Four. We get to see a sonic sponge go after Johnny until he is able to blow it up. And then, of course, Reed and Ben have to deal with their mechanical crafts to deal with. And once we get Ben actually clobbering up the machine that is Annihilus's base, Annihilus is just found amongst the rubble, and they have to end up taking that cosmic control rod from him, because that is the only cure for Sue and Nathaniel Richards. And Reed needs it to get back home, but also to save his family. So that's very interesting. I kind of wish they had gone into this storyline in the movie. I know there wasn't a lot of screen time, and of course that Galactus was the main villain of the Fantastic Four. But it would have been cool to see, the process of which, how the baby came along. I heard that they just kind of don't really focus much on the baby coming, and then it's there, and then they have to save it from Galactus. So Annihilus calls these creatures to destroy his rocket, which they make quite quick work of it. Just tearing it apart piece by piece. And then we've got these creatures battling the Fantastic Four until, of course, Reed uses his mind to control the cosmic control rod. It is being, it manipulates magnetic waves and thought patterns. So it's very fascinating that, this high tech, which some would say it comes from the quantum realm, the negative zone. Either way, very fascinating. We do see that Annihilus is tracking them on his gunship. So they took a rocket while he had a gunship. Very interesting stuff. And of course he blasts them in subspace to try to get them off their course. Try to return or retrieve the master control rod. They all begin spiraling out of control without the help of Reed. Then they end up falling on a bit of asteroids, which are very fascinating. We then see, of course, kind of like on the comic cover, the asteroids are in fact exploding as they hit the surface below, so they have to come up with a way of getting away, escaping. And they end up telling him perhaps there's even life on this planet below, composed of negative particles, opposite than the particles that would make up our world. What would happen if they stayed? Possibly a great civilization exists down there, culture with scientific know-how to return to our own world. But Reed theorizes what would happen if a negative person, a positive person collide. Would they destroy one another? So that's very fascinating. Even though they think it's just a mess down there, there is people, civilization, more intelligence than just creatures. Somehow evolution has gone on here, even though it's all backwards. So that's very fascinating as well. But before they get the chance to discover if there is life out there that helps them, Annihilus comes back to blow up their rock, of course. And then they have a press conference in our world about the medical status of Sue Storm and how they're looking for the other three members of the Fantastic Four, but they're nowhere to be found. So that's interesting. We do see that Reed kind of bargains with Annihilus about how they need the master control rod to save his family, and Annihilus needs it because he's afraid of dying. So, in a way, they both could use the rod. He ends up giving them back their devices, Reed and Ben, that they use to traverse the negative zone. And then, of course, once their rock hits the surface, it begins to blow up. They wait to the last moment, and then they jump. Johnny kind of helps them with his abilities. And then, as they're fleeing their increasingly bad situation, Reed does keep his word. He throws the Master Control Rod to a nihilist, which he swings in to catch it with his wings, and then he is off back to his lair, I'm supposing. Which they're basically saying, oh, we've got to reach Sue and the baby before it arrives. So that leads to them going back to our realm, our dimension, which is really nice. Of course, they're in the waiting room, looking to see how Sue is. They're all very nervous and concerned. But then, of course, the doctors come out and they tell them the surgery was a success, the baby's out, and that they're doing fine. So all the procedures went well. So that's very good. You get to see they're a big, happy family right at the end, with Reed holding Nathaniel Richards. The Fantastic Four family has grown. So really awesome Omnibus, guys. I highly recommend you checking out the comics. Real quick right here, this is Appendix 1. Just going over the Namor comic real fast. The Submariner. This is the very first comic book he showed up in, the 1940s. So very interesting. I just went over this real fast. Submariner with fishermen out at sea trying to retrieve an old shipwreck, trying to get the minerals from it. This reminded me very much of the opening scene, or not quite opening, but early beginnings of Wakanda Forever. So this is very interesting with Namor, the Prince of the Seas, encountering fishermen. Now, of course, we remember in Wakanda Forever, they were there looking for vibranium. So, very different than, fishing, looking for shipwrecks. But we do see that he is quite hostile to these fishermen. He cuts their lines. He crushes their tanks. Not very good. But of course, he is angry at humanity after being woken up by Johnny, the Human Torch. He went to Atlantis in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and it was destroyed by nuclear bombs. So he's very upset with the human race right now. He's basically an anti-hero at sometimes, and sometimes he's working with the Fantastic Four. But he's very much like Marvel's Aquaman. If you guys hadn't heard of the Submariner before, he returns to his derelict kingdom with evidence of humans interfering in one of their lands, which I thought that was very interesting as well. That he has somewhat of a higher up that he has to report to, so that's cool. Then they do go into how some of the fish people are allowed to breathe human air, and they can actually go to the surface and do espionage, spy work, like Namor. Namor is a mutant, so not only can he breathe water and swim through the sea, he can also go on land, where some of the Atlanteans or Talocanians, depending on which version of the comics you read, some of them can go on the land and some of them can't. So that's kind of a big deal. Okay. Then showing that once they got up to the lighthouse, they began to destroy things, and the police were on to them, trying to stop them from getting rid of property, running amok, not doing very hero things in the comics. But they are, again, trying to stop humanity from wrecking their world. And then once we get to see the military get involved, Namor, of course, saves his princess by putting her in a plane, which she probably doesn't know how to operate. Very interesting stuff. But yeah, Really cool. And then we've got a little bit of a side comic towards the end. That's just, a bunch of goofy people running around. Suggestions for further reading. The Fantastic Four collections. So yeah, see Stan Lee, Jack Kirby's Fantastic Four Omnibus Volumes 1 through 3, 2005 to 2025. So very interesting stuff. Marvel's Masterworks, Fantastic Four Volume 17. And then Fantastic Four Volume Omnibus Volume 1, 2011. So yeah, it's just giving you a whole bunch of recommendations on omnibuses in the back, which is really cool. Because this was the first omnibus I've actually gotten through all the way. And yeah, it came out in 2023. But there are Amazing Spider-Man ones, there are Fantastic Four ones, which I have, Avengers, X-Men, Captain America, Black Panther, and many more. So this is from Penguin Classics Marvel Collections. I'll show you guys the picture up front. Really dope. I've been reading this comic most of the year, and I just got done with it. So this one's in the bag. So awesome. Possum. Also, I've got a Doom comic to go into because we're going into Avengers Doomsday, of course. And we might even be getting a title change. We're not exactly sure, with the Russos posting on Instagram cryptically, look hard, and this black and white image of them on set. Don't really see a whole lot, but some people are claiming that they see the AVX symbol, so Avengers versus X-Men, which would be a pretty good title compared to Avengers Doomsday or Kang Dynasty or any of the other ones they've tried. But going into this real quick, throw on my Magneto helmet. I'll equip myself. We've got Doom 2099, issue number 1. So very interesting stuff there, guys, with a reflective cover. So be sure to like the video, comment down below if you haven't already. You can subscribe to the channel for future videos, or you can go on to my Instagram page, my TikTok threads @SceneScreenGuru, and you can show me some love and support there. Thank you very much. Alright, let's go into the comic, shall we? So starting off, we've got Latveria in 2099. So this is the future, far future from where we last saw Doctor Doom in the Fantastic Four comics. And we see, of course, young punks trying to sell technology on the black market, where this individual is trying to get less money out of them than they're worth. So that's very nice. Scheming, hustling. We do get to see guardsmen arrive, which are these atomic robots that protect and serve, kind of over like the Iron Man bots in Avengers Age of Ultron. But these are robots to try to stop crime. Guardsmen, which these two kids have to run from. In the midst of running, of course, Doctor Doom arrives from out of time, which is very fascinating. Love to see him show up. So then, we get to see the Guardians don't recognize Doom. They try to make him identify himself, and he of course claims, "I am Doom." That's the kind of thing you say. Awesome art cover. And then of course, like I said, this issue is from Game Boy. There were original Game Boy is being advertised. This is old. Try to find a year on one of the ads real quick for you. 1992. This is a 92 comic. We do see the young kids are curious and worried about Doom. And he basically explains he just wants to speak with them. He doesn't want to harm them. He's trying to figure out where he's at. So that's very interesting as well. Then we get to see this new bigwig of Latveria. let's see, what's his name? There's a stone guy, and then there's also a girl that reads tarot cards, so that's really cool. Which I believe they call her Vision or something else. I'm trying to see real quick. Master of Assassins, determined. Weil, yeah, Tiger Weil. Okay, so TW. And he has a magnetic suit as well, similar to Iron Man in the future. And he's basically a power broker, a tycoon that's taken over command of that area. So that's very interesting. Doom arrives after dispensing with some of his handymen. We do see that the gypsy known as the card reader does say he is needed to continue their plans. So that's very interesting. This is probably one of the only comics where we see Doom is taken down by another villain. So that was kind of interesting to see, because Doom's always kind of the OP peak villain, but he's actually taken out by Tyler Weil. So that was kind of interesting as well. He didn't anticipate his suit draining energy from Doom, circuits overloading, and of course he fell to the ground. Then of course we see him remove Doom's mask, and he doesn't have the scars. So Tyler Mile gives him scars to match the outfit. So that's very fascinating as well. Moving on, we do see he's bandaged up by the gypsies. And they do talk about how they have technology, medicine to cure his face, but he wants to keep the scars to remember the pain. Then we see most of them wake up. Fortune, so that's what they call the card reader. Fortune. She talks with Doom and aligns herself with him so that their group can take out Tyler Weil. So it's all a big, scheme, if you will, for power, control. Doom then goes to his assistant's Wire, which we saw at the beginning of the comic, riding around on a bike. Wire is able to access any world database, and Fortune is telling him that he's the best of the best. He's the one that needs to remake his suit, modernize the Doom suit. So that's very interesting. We see Doom walking around without his mask for a while, just bandages, which is an interesting look for him. And then, of course, he talks about how, in case he ever needed to leave the country, he left a descendant of his a marker to basically get out. And it was a secret bunker, which had a flying craft. So that's really nice. They end up flying 4 hours in cloaked flight through the Atlantic airspace. Diamond Hawk crossed South America, headed for Isla Lobos de Fuleta. So basically an island off the Peruvian coast owned by a multimedia conglomerate. So very interesting stuff there. But of course Doom still has his weapons and cash stored in this island, which is very interesting that they're breaking land up into different corporations and companies, similar to dystopian future, Alien Earth, similar things to that. We do see that there's already a security guard inside the base, as Doom tells them this area is now under his control. If they want to be freed, they'll help him. So the remaining scientists inside the base are still alive, reluctantly help Doom to accomplish his goals. So that's very interesting. They talk about creating a cyber neural interface with ultimate potential. So that's very interesting as well. We get to see a bit of a flashback of where Doom last remembered his timeline, being defeated by Fantastic Four. He's having a bit of a crisis of consciousness, but very interesting stuff there. And then we get to see that the scientists are basically claiming if he wasn't Doom before, he definitely is now, because some of them didn't believe he had come from the past a few hundred years. But now we've got a new Long Live Doom outfit, which is very interesting. Brand new tech in 2099. So that's awesome. He's refurbished, ready to go back at it again, similar to the art cover on the front page. But yeah, that was my comic book reviews. I do have a bit of movie news to go into real quick. Okay, let's get into that movie news real quick. Starting off, we've got Avengers Doomsday may have a teaser inside of Avatar Fire and Ash screening. There may be the first teaser for our new Avengers film, so that's very interesting. And then of course we've got recently the activities around ufology has been driven more towards the occult, and Republicans and even past astronauts claiming these things are demonic. So that's a very interesting term that they're using for these creatures coming from space. I know a lot of this is tied into their religious dogma. But we've got an astronaut, Charlie Duke recently came out and was saying, oh, they're demons. They're definitely demons. So that was very fascinating news to hear about. But very interesting that elisabethmoss confirms Invisible Man 2 is happening, that she wants to come back to the project. This is probably after the last season of The Handmaid's Tale didn't do too well for her. She wasn't able to buy her way back into Scientology's good graces, so of course she's going back to acting. But yeah, very interesting to see Stephanjames has been cast as our new Carl Weathers in the iamrocky biopic, so that's really cool to hear about. Can't wait to see that. Now with 007 news, we have heard recently that Amazon MGM is eyeing jacobelordi from, of course, Saltburn. He was in Euphoria, Priscilla, several other films. But they want him to be our new 00, which is causing a bit of controversy because just a few weeks ago, the studio did announce that it has to be someone British. It has to be someone that, is the guy. But now they're wanting jacobelordi. So that's very fascinating news. And then, of course, we're going to get a 2028 release for that 007. So it's going to be a few years out. But right now they're talking about jacobelordi. He's going to star as Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein in November, which is getting really big, high praise. So they're grooming these actors to have much bigger roles. Disney revealed the cost of the Indiana Jones Dial of Destiny film after saying it didn't cost that much and saying, oh, they weren't behind in production, all this stuff. Well, now it's been revealed by their investors and by their brackets that it cost $419 million, which is one of the most expensive films ever made. That cost more than both of the last two Jurassic World films. It cost more than several projects that Disney's worked on over the years on Disney Plus. But their excuse was they had a tax benefit from the UK that they didn't really have to pay back the full $419 million. They only had to pay back $360 million. So that was kind of it saved them a bit, but it didn't really help the film because the film was a bit of a flop. I liked it very much, but a lot of the other audiences felt it was a bit off, an older Indiana Jones in the film, and the way the film was timed, the setting was off a bit. But But at least the last two Jurassic World movies made money. I mean, they can't really excuse this with saying, oh, we're sorry we spent all this money on a film that didn't make anything, right? They need to start making these films for a much lower budget, similar to Conjuring 4. It recently, it only had a $55 million budget, and it's already made almost $400 million. So that's a really good estimate for them with horror, starting low and then raising up the bar. But Mummy, they're talking about Mummy with Brendan coming back potentially. We know we've got a new Mummy movie coming from a horror director, which I've posted about. But this is apparently a new project that Brendan Fraser said he wants to do, a Mummy 4, which is very interesting. James Gunn announced 2 movies and 1 TV show that is happening. It's been greenlit. And there's been rumor, speculation of who the TV show and the movies will be about. But very interesting to see. First poster for Game of Thrones spin-off Knight of the Seven Kingdoms dropped as well. We're going to be getting a trailer, I think, tomorrow. So be sure to keep your eyes and ears out for that. But that'll do it for my movie news and my comic reviews. What do you guys think? Let me know down below in the comments. Thank you very much for supporting my channel. I have made it up to 82 subscribers already. So shout out to everyone that's been doing the love and support. Till next time, guys, I'll be leaving you, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.